Hello, friends. Welcome back to another edition of the Lovecast with Jamal Podcast. I am excited to bring this conversation to you today. I have a fantastic attorney that's sitting across the proverbial podcasting table for me today. Her name is Rachel. Rachel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, and I think it's going to be fun.
Absolutely. Well, on the show, if you listen to the show, really just love to, I am super fascinated about people's stories, how they got into doing what they're doing. I know there's a story behind your life and how you got to the place that you are currently right now. But I'd love to, just for the listeners, just kind of give a little background. Tell us a little bit about your beginnings. Where did you grow up and what was life like for you growing up?
Definitely. I think we all have a story, and it's always the story that's the most fun. I grew up in Thousand Oaks, California, so I'm Southern California raised. I currently live still in Southern California. I was raised in a divorced family, so I had my dad in Nevada. I was primarily with my mom, and I would move I had the traditional visitation schedule. So, with my mom during the school year, and then holidays, summers, breaks, things like that, I would go to my dad's. And not only did that really shape how I am today, but it allowed me an opportunity that maybe other people wouldn't get. So my dad is an attorney, and he always owned his own business. My stepdad is also an entrepreneur. So in both households, I was raised around this idea of being able to own your own business so that you can, to a certain degree, make as much money as you want to, but also have control of your life. And when I would go to my dad's, he would always use the time that we had together, because he still had to work. So in the evenings after dinners, on the weekends, he would bring me into the living room and we would talk about his cases. He would give me all of the facts, all of the drama. Yeah. And then he would ask me what I thought. Now, as a kid, I thought, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I get to be a lawyer, right? I get to decide how he's going to argue, because like all, good parents, he would say, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do what you said, Rachel. Now, in hindsight, I realized that's absolutely not what was going on. I would have an idea and he would appease me, but it really got me involved in the law. And I think the pairing of being raised with entrepreneurs and then being kind of in the legal field, immersed in it when I was with my dad, really led me naturally to this place that I am now, which is owning a law firm. And then I started owning my own companies when I was like 12. So I think it's just truly in kind of my blood, and I have so much fun.
Oh, that is absolutely amazing. What a gift that your dad gave to you just by including you in his work. So many people, I think, compartmentalize their lives and, and have boxes for, family life and work life and that kind of thing. I love that picture of how your dad just brought you into his world and saw you as a seamless part of that.
He did. He really did. I will say, when I told him I was going to be a lawyer and I told him I wanted to do that, he was not as excited as I
Really?
thought. He, not for the reasons that maybe one thing, he thought it's a very stressful career. I agree with him. It's a very stressful career. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of challenges that come. It's very emotionally draining. And I think when I told him that, he wanted me to be aware of what I was getting into. It's not this picture perfect telling everybody that you're an attorney. It's not all roses. So I think he was a little bit worried. Now
Totally.
He's so happy, and we practice, we communicate on cases together. It's really fun.
Amazing. So really just, you kind of it's almost like what you were doing when you were a child and he was, collaborating with you on cases. It's kind of like that just continued into your adulthood.
It did. Now it's, he's older. So I always find it fun when he calls me and says, I've got this case, I've got this facts. What would you do? And I think, oh my gosh, I've made it. If my dad calls me and asks me for advice, then it's like the biggest compliment ever.
Amazing. How soon in your life did you know you wanted to be an attorney?
I think I wanted to be an attorney since I was in high school.
Okay.
my mom has been telling me since I learned how to manipulate, and not in a bad way, that I always got what I wanted because I was a natural attorney. And then again, watching my dad, it was a very attractive career for me.
Wow. So you said that you've kind of entrepreneurship is kind of in your blood a little bit. This is something that's just come naturally for you. And you said you started owning your own businesses from like what, 11 years old? Is that correct?
12, so I was
12.
a little bit older.
Totally.
I
What was your first business?
A babysitting company. So think Babysitters Club come to life. I know there's actually a lot of people that start companies that way. I was fortunate enough to be like the only person old enough to babysit and in my neighborhood. And so I got a whole lot of babysitting gigs. It got to be to the point where I couldn't do all of them. So I would, pass them off to my friends. And somewhere along the way, I realized that I was getting the complaints, like if my friends didn't do a good job. And I thought, well, if I'm going to orchestrate this whole thing, I should maybe get a kickback. So I started, I don't want to say overcharging, but like taking a cut. I got business cards made. It was called Baby City. And I did that, I think
Wow.
from 12 until 14 was kind of my Baby City years.
Amazing. I love that. Okay. So this was really in your blood. I mean, this is how you thought. That's
I do. I think I love business ownership. I love the idea that to be a business owner, truly all you have to do is say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make money at it.
hmm,
And that is all I mean, of course, there's a lot more that goes into it, but as soon as you've made that decision, you are a business owner. And I
amazing.
love the fact that anybody can do it.
So vision, so having a vision, a clear, an idea, and then the idea of this is how can be monetized, or I can make an income from this. This literally is the beginnings of entrepreneurship, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. But it's even simpler. I'm going to do this and I'm going to make money, because we can all dedicate our time and volunteer and give back and do hobbies. And that's all fun, right? We need to do all of that to be self-fulfilled and successful. But as soon as you say, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make money at it,
Hmm.
you have created a business. Now there's more that goes into it. How you do that is
Sure.
an issue. But once you've made that decision, I
Mhm.
think everything else falls into place. You start to
Amazing.
value, you tell people what you do, people start paying you for it, and it's the snowball effect.
I love it. That's fantastic. And there's so much freedom in that flexibility. Wow, amazing. And so you were in the Army for 2 years, 4 years?
I was in for 7 years. I was first in
7
Alaska
years.
and then went to Fort Hood. I realized partway through my time in Alaska that I wanted to be a lawyer and I was ready to go to college. And so I kind of strategically planned to finish my bachelor's degree as much as I could while in the Army, so
Mhm.
that when I got out of the Army, I could use my GI Bill to pay for law school, because law school is frightfully expensive. And so
Mhm.
I re-enlisted to go to Texas for that reason. And it all worked. It actually worked out exactly as I planned it. So I have the Army and the VA to thank for my law school.
Amazing, amazing. And what an abrupt shift, right? You go from kind of being on the beach, enjoying life, growing up in California, to joining the Army, boot camp. Cannot imagine it being easy. Such a different way of life, and then obviously getting shipped off to Alaska. I mean, what a whole different world. What are some things that you feel like that you're taking away from your military experience? What did it, I know it's kind of hard to do this, but if you were to look back on that 7 year period in the Army, how what is it what you know what is it that you glean from that experience that you could not have learned any other place?
Well, even though people say, oh, California is so diverse, I will be the first to admit the military really showed me what the country had to
Mm,
offer. I didn't listen to country music, right? I grew up in Southern California. Country is not a strong music, and that's so silly. But I was still a teenager at that point. It was kind of shocking that so much of the country listened to country music. I volunteered for Alaska. I volunteered for Alaska because I didn't know that Fort Wainwright existed. And I thought, well, if I could go anywhere, looking at my options, let's go somewhere I would never choose to voluntarily live. And so Alaska was it. I thought I was going to Fort Richardson, which for everybody listening, Fort Richardson is on the coast. Fairbanks and Fort Wainwright is like very close to the Arctic Circle, so their climates are much different. And my biggest takeaway from the military, other than the discipline and the benefits that I've received, are truly the experiences. Having the opportunity to live in Alaska during winter is like life-changing. Being able to go to Texas and live in, I was at Fort Hood, see Austin kind of on a weekly basis, get to San Antonio, just experience these completely different ways of life. I was in Georgia for a bit. I was in South Carolina for a bit. So it's not even the people, it is also being immersed in these different really ways of life that we have around the country that I don't think many of us get to do because it's expensive and hard to move. But when the military is sending you out there, it's on their dime.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. And most people, I can't remember, there's a specific stat that I'm thinking of, but high percentage of people are born and die within about a 90-mile radius of where they grew up. And
I've heard that. Blows my mind.
Yeah, it's mind blowing. And what that does is I think it just, the world we experience, this is just been my experience, the world I experience is largely the ability to travel and to meet different kinds of people and experience different environments gives you it kind of widens your ability to experience things, because the brain is constantly drawing from past experience to make sense of a new experience. But when you've only experienced a few things, everything gets filtered into that limited experience that you have. If you only talk to certain kinds of people and you're only in different kinds, certain parts of the country, your own familiar neighborhood, then literally the entire thing that we call life, this diverse, amazing thing, gets filtered into our level of experience, filtered down into our level of experience. And I feel like there's so much more of life that we can experience the more we actually have experience outside of our own comfort zones, because now we have more of a reference point to experience new things from. And traveling has been that for me. But I love that in the military for you, it's like the country came to you in many ways. You're meeting people from all different parts of the country. And this really is, you think of the United States, I mean, obviously it's one country, but it's really not, in the sense of when you get into the culture, you get into the people, there's just and the history of how each place was settled. Every time you meet somebody from a different part of the country, you're kind of getting all of that, all of those layers. And I love that's what you got to experience in the Army, and prepared you probably for your career and dealing with all different kinds of people, because in your career as an attorney, I mean, you're working with, there's probably not just one kind. I mean, you're working with all different kinds of people, and the ability to relate to them has to be really key for you. So amazing experience. So you go from the military to law school. Where did you go to law school?
I went to Thomas Jefferson School of Law at that time it was an accredited law school in the Gaslamp district. I had a child already, or two children. I was married. I actually
Gaslamp, San Diego, is that correct?
San Diego, yeah.
Yes,
sorry, Gaslamp in San Diego.
Yep.
And I was really looking for a law school that wouldn't require me to relocate. My husband was recently deployed. We moved back here from Texas. He's also from Ohio, actually.
Oh, wow.
think he wanted to Southern California so bad, which was good because I wanted to come back. But I didn't want a law school where I would have to relocate my family again. And so that was a law school that was close enough that I could drive to. They also had a really great relationship with the VA Yellow Ribbon program, and they gave me a studio apartment so that I didn't have to drive back and forth every day. So again, very grateful for the law school. I do find that things have worked out very pleasantly in my life so that I've been able to do everything I did. And I attended law school as a full-time law student, didn't do anything after my husband got back from Iraq. And then I immediately opened my law firm.
I've been fascinated by, well, first of all, is incredible. It's incredible because you really, from my vantage point, I think you would get to know a lot about people and what makes people tick, and really how to tell story and how to help tell people's stories and have their perspective really. I mean, the things that attorneys get to do. My understanding is that you're helping see a side of a person that maybe they wouldn't see when you're representing them, and so that really would require a high level of awareness into a person's story. Family law, again, relationships are so important because they, first of all, my understanding is that human beings cannot thrive without healthy relationships, but relationships are largely a dependent, in my understanding, or they're largely a mirror of our inner state of being. So when things go, when there's challenges or things go wrong, this is typically when my understanding of family law is this is where things have broke down to a point where we now need some assistance, right? Can you talk a little bit about what is it like for you as an attorney? I know you practice many different kinds of laws, and it's not just one kind of law, but I know you do practice family law. Can you talk a little bit about that? What have you learned from doing that, and what are some of the things that maybe people don't know about family law that just from the outside looking in?
I'm a litigator. And so I litigate family law. I litigate all of the areas that I practice, and I practice in areas that require litigation. Family law is, well, first of all, I want to start by saying I'm a big advocate also of relationships. I'm actually a huge advocate of marriage, which I think people are sometimes surprised because I do divorce. But everything that I've learned growing up, right? I was raised in a divorced household. My parents did some things really well, and they did some things that are like, you should never repeat ever, right? And so I think I've been able to take what was positive as a child and my negative takeaways from a divorced family and bring that to my practice. Being in the military did truly allow me to see a lot of different people, which especially family law has translated to really understanding of people. I don't pass judgment. I think that's like so fundamental in my practice. Is my job is to have my clients understand their case, understand the laws because they're complicated, and see how their family fits into those laws. And then how can we present their story in a way that will have the judge understanding, in family law, we're in front of a judge, have a judge understanding what is going on in this case. While I do litigate, I am a big believer that families should be in control of themselves. At the end of the day, it's not my family. I don't have to live out the custody orders. I don't have to survive on the incomes and the assets that have been divided. It's their family. And so I want them to have the best orders, right? Or the best judgment in place so that they can really be better at the end of it than they are at the beginning. Maybe not have as much money or live in the same house as their children 100% of the time, but that doesn't mean it's going to be worse. It can be so much better because your relationships are a lot stronger. And that's what I want for my clients. And I think a lot of people don't think that's what family law is about. For me, that's what family law is about. It's about creating an environment so that the family as a whole can be successful when they're done with it. It's an incredibly stressful process, but at the end of the day, just like you want to give your clients the tools so that they can be the best versions of themselves. And that's what I want for them. The family unit broke down. Nobody gets married thinking, oh, I'm going to get divorced one day, right? That's a sad moment when that happens, but it doesn't have to be the worst moment in your life. It can be one point that ultimately leads to you being the best parent, the best ex-spouse, and even the best new spouse, if that's what you decide to do.
Amazing. I love that. I love that.
Like, how do you maintain your sense of being in balance that allows you to continue working really hard for your clients, but at the same time, it doesn't overwhelm you or cause you to lose your sense of groundedness or being in the process? How does that bend for you? What's that like for you?
Most family law attorneys honestly get out for exactly the reasons that you just said. It can be emotionally trying. People are losing, nobody gets married thinking they're going to get divorced. People are losing their children or feel like they're losing their children. Finances are completely a mess, at least at the beginning or through the process. And it took a really long time. I didn't know when I first started doing family law whether I was going to be able to. I heard from probably every attorney that I spoke with that family law was going to take it out of me, and you can only do it for 8 or 10 years and then you're done. And so right from the beginning, I made a point to put in rules for myself. So I put in rules as far as when I would be available to my clients. And that was as basic as just timing. I also made it a point to, and I still do, tell every client, I'm not your emotional support system through this process. So you're going to tell me a whole lot of things and we'll be very close, we'll feel close, but I can't be the emotional support system for you through a divorce process or a family law process, because I have to stay clear-headed. So you don't want to call me and have me say, oh, you're right. Oh my gosh, poor thing. That can't be my job. So I really make sure my clients have some people in place that they can go to for that. And then which helps me because I don't feel that pressure to listen all the time or be the support to validate their feelings. But I also, this sounds kind of callous, I do not lose sleep. I make sure I do not lose sleep over my clients' cases. I think that's why I'm able to do a good job in family law and stay in it. Because if you're losing your children, that's devastating for you. I get it. I have kids. I can't imagine how that would feel, but I can't not sleep because you're losing your children. I have to remember that I have my own family. I have my own kids. And if I'm not sleeping, not only is it going to affect me physically and mentally and emotionally, I'm not going to be able to take care of my family. And all of that together is going to make it so my mind is not on my client. So I really, really take the time to make sure I don't lose sleep over clients. That doesn't mean I don't wake up in the middle of the night sometimes thinking, oh my gosh. And I run and I do yoga and I remind myself quite regularly when I feel like I'm getting pulled down that this is their case, it's their life. And while I want to help them, I can't change the situation. And I really can't ever have it come and impede my life, my practice, and my family.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, I'm so glad you said that. And in the coaching world, one of the things I always, it can be a challenge in the beginning, but this thing I want to get across to folks is, hey, your life is your making. It doesn't mean I don't care. It doesn't mean I don't want to remedy. And I had to learn this the hard way through your own life events, family, people you want to help, you just try to help. And you realize there's just a rule of thumb here is that everybody's life is their making, and it's not possible to undo that. You can respond to their life, you can assist people, but when somebody can understand like, hey, there's no one ultimately to blame, it's just your life. And there's decisions you have to make that will determine the course of what you end up experiencing, what happens to you. But I can't undo that. So that helps. I think that's always helped me to just have this sense of I can assist that person, but their life is their life. It's their making. My life is my life. It's my making. Nobody can usurp that.
Absolutely. And you don't want to feel guilty, right? I remember starting to feel guilty because a ruling didn't happen our way, or my client didn't get what they wanted in a family law case. And I had to not feel guilty. I can't feel guilty I had a client call me once, or a potential client, and her kids were getting taken away. It was inevitable. There was some really bad things that had happened, circumstances within her control and out of her control that had this play out, but she didn't have any money. And it wasn't going to work for me to represent her. And at the end, when I basically told her that at the conversation, she said, I hope you don't have children, because nobody should have a parent like you who cares so little for what happens to their kids. And it really ticked me off, quite frankly, but it was early on in my career and it helped me, because I was like, I absolutely care about you. But I can't lose sleep over you. I can't feel guilty because I'm not going to not take your case because you can't pay me, right? I joke and I say, I can't take the goodwill to the grocery store to buy cheese for my family, right? I need rules in place. And once I was able to separate that and not feel guilty, it really made me be able to attack family law in a way that ultimately was more beneficial for my clients. Nobody wants their attorney to be that emotionally involved in their case, then you can't see clearly. And I would expect the same is true with life coaching, right?
100%. Yeah, I'm really glad to hear you say it, because, it's just true in life, right? If you're emotionally involved, I think a word I like to use is entangled, right? If you get entangled in a process, then you're not able, again, there's a lot of resistive energy that it's unconscious, but you end up using in a situation. And there's a phrase here, what you resist persists. So if you're using resistive energy, you're not thinking clearly, you're not able to see what's needed, because there's something invested, there's something on the line here. And then, that ends up becoming counterproductive almost always. And again, you learn that through time as you go through the process. I'm sure you have. But it's really good just to maintain. And I like to always say this, I sometimes don't buy into people's story. So for example, a person, and that's not that I don't believe them, but a lot of people are operating under assumptions, right? Unconscious assumptions. And one of those sometimes is lack. Like there's just not enough. There's not enough for me to, there's not enough money, there's not enough resources. And when somebody comes to you,
it would all be better, right?
Totally. And when they approach me, like, I just need whatever this is, the way and let's say somebody can't afford services or whatever. And I always say, okay, my assumption is, and this is kind of the way I've learned to see the world and life, and is that when something is in alignment for you, resources will come to you. Situations will come to you when it's needed. And if it's not the right time or not the right fit, it won't be there. And that's okay. And so I always say our goal is clarity, just getting clear. Is this a right fit? Is it not a right fit? So if I bought into this idea of this is why, they need me, I'm their coach, I have to say, help them or whatever, and they just don't have the money, then I'll get myself roped into that narrative, which is not, that narrative needs to actually go, not be reinforced. So that's kind of something that's been helpful for me as well along the way.
I am going to use that, I think, if it's okay with you. I really
think that's
totally true. I have to tell people quite often what I'm about to tell you is going to be very expensive. Lawyers are very expensive. And if you feel that you need an attorney and you feel that I'm the right one, and that's where you are in your case, it's a really good time to go, again, kind of figure out how you can put this together. And if you can't, that's okay. Maybe it's not the right time. But if ever there was a situation to find your resources, then they have to want it more than me, right?
Totally. Absolutely. Well, okay. So after the years that you've spent, obviously you were in the military, you worked in the military, then you've spent a number of years in family law. What do you, like, people listening to this, what would you, if you could speak into the folks who maybe are thinking about family or getting in a relationship or the things, because you deal with the aftermath of things that go awry. What do you wish people knew or understood? What have you learned along the way that you wish, if I could pass this on to somebody?
I'll say one common thing, and then I'll say one thing that maybe is way controversial. I think it's really important for people to understand that it's your family and it's your life, and what works for you may not work for somebody else, or what worked for somebody else may not work for you. you only file for divorce or separate or leave the relationship if it works for you. But it also doesn't, I don't ever think, and I never recommend, I'm a huge advocate of marriage, which is ironic since I do family divorce, but divorce does not, or separation is not a cure. Sometimes in the movies, they get back together. It's like the thing that finally had the spouse make changes. That is very rare. I think it's happened once I've ever seen people in real life get remarried in my cases. So mostly it's a huge breach of trust. So I don't think you should throw out the divorce word as an attempt to change. I think you only use it when you're very serious. So that's one that I can say to everybody when you're getting into a relationship. But the one that's controversial is we're kind of going through a time, and we've been going through it for a while, where people don't want to get married. There's kind of this overarching theme of, I don't need to get married. I can be independent. I can do all of this. And that can be almost more devastating than if you don't get married, because there are laws in place to protect people in a marriage. Those same laws do not exist when my grandma always used to say, shacking up, right? So you can not get married because that's your belief. You can buy a house together, you can commingle assets. And guess what? That doesn't mean that you're entitled to spousal support, even after 30 years. That doesn't mean that you're entitled to half the house necessarily if you're not on title, even if you contributed. And I think that's one thing that everybody, especially in 2022, 2023, and these years to follow, is think about what you are, not that you want to think about the breakup, right? But think about why you're not getting married, and if that's your choice, and how you can still protect yourself, knowing that there's not marital protection laws in place. We do not have common law marriage in California.
Well, that's really, really good advice. I love what you said about because I work with people, and when they get a thing in their mind, especially if they're miserable, or if that life isn't going well and they're upset, and they think this, it's easy for the mind to pin it. Or who's this culprit? Who's the scapegoat? Like, it's my spouse, it's this person. If I could just get rid of that person, it's almost like they're like, yeah, that my life would be much simpler, much less complicated. They can imagine the future that would be better. And I've so many times I said, but you didn't start here. Like, so the things that contributed to your unhappiness, well, I'm not saying that your other party is like innocent and not culpable in any way. What you're experiencing internally is happening within you, and that's not going to change as soon as those papers are signed. It's still happening. That discomfort is inside of you, is still going to be there, and you still have to live with yourself. So it's not a cure-all, it's not a fix-all. I love that. You have to be really serious. Like, obviously there's situations and times for it, but it's not a small thing, and it's not a fix-all. I love that. I love that. And I love, just the advice, like, hey, the society is designed to benefit folks who are married. So keep that in mind. So good advice. Appreciate that.
And your happiness this goes kind of beyond the practice of law, and it's just a personal opinion. Your happiness is not up to your spouse, right? So again, like you said, it may be your spouse is not perfect and is doing some things that are irritating, but most of the time, people, in my opinion, put more blame on other people. I will say though, every time I've had a couple that has gotten divorced, at the end of it, they're far happier than they were at the beginning of it. And while I don't want anybody to get divorced, I'm not an advocate for divorce, there are certainly relationships that shouldn't be anymore. And that's kind of the goal, is that if you are in one of those relationships, when you do split, you are better off than you were when you started, because then that was the right decision.
Totally. No, that's good. Good to know. So we'll wrap up on this question. Where, and this is just more about yourself a little bit, where do you, like, if you could, it's kind of a difficult challenge, but where do you, like, 10 years into the future, what do you think you'll be doing? What do you think your life will look like?
Oh, well, they say if you put it in the universe, then it will be, right? So I think like the biggest dream of mine would be to have a Judge Judy kind of show. I think that would be a really fun thing to do. I don't know, that might be just a pipe dream. From a practice standpoint, I would really like to find myself the owner of a law firm that did very complex strategic litigation for unique cases. Right now I do strategic litigation, but it's not, I don't have, I mean, we're not a unique, most of our cases are not unique, right? So if I could really have specialized cases and be the one that everybody wants to have as their litigator, that would be my goal for 10 years, any point really in my law career.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, that's fantastic. Just to be known for a specialized niche in the family law field. Would it stay in family law?
I do. I really like family law and probate. Probate is families. We're just dealing typically with somebody who's incapacitated or after somebody passes away, but you still get that large family dynamic. I really like litigating those two areas of law. And I think I'm really good at it because I actually don't want everybody to fight all the time. I want us to kind of all get along. So how we can get through and find resolution, whether it's through a settlement or through trial, so that we can save the family relationships to the extent that we can. Let's try and not make them any worse by throwing blows through the litigation. If it has to be litigated, let's go through the process and really let's find everybody involved a solution so that we can move on.
I love that. So what I'm hearing you say is like, it's actually law, the use of law for the means of peace, to achieve peace and reconciliation, right?
Perfect. Yes, I've never been able to say it like that, but that is exactly it. Yeah.
Totally. And one of the benefits of even shows, like whether it's like the Dr. Phil show or whether it's like Judge Judy, there's a reason people watch it. I mean, it's entertaining, but there's a deeper reason because you learn. There's things that people learn from listening to these cases and to listening to the wisdom that sometimes judges will share their thoughts and insights on the case, and there's wisdom there. And I think there's a measure of healing that can be gleaned from helping people navigate their issues. So that is an interesting twist on law. I don't say it's a twist, but maybe just it's an angle towards reconciliation and peace. And I love that. I think that's what I'm hearing you say. Those two things that seem to represent that.
Yes, that is it. I really do want people to find the peace at the end of the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel, so that they can move on. Law is so stressful, and being in a lawsuit is so stressful, and you almost have to hold on to anger and resentment to even weather the storm. So let's try and take the stress out of it. Let's know how we can do it. What is our path? And then let's get there as quickly as possible so we can take that huge burden off and you can actually go back to enjoying your life. Nobody enjoys being involved in a litigation at all, except maybe the attorneys that are getting paid.
Totally. Now, thank you for sharing. Rachel, this has been really, really informative and helpful. And it's just great to get a snapshot into your world. Not many people get an opportunity to get a snapshot into the world of an attorney and then, a family law attorney. So this is really good for a lot of people. So I appreciate you being generous with your time and making time to come on the show. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been really fun. It's nice to talk about family law in a different light. So I appreciate that opportunity.
Of course. Where can people, let's say they need to get in touch with you. Where can people connect with you?
I am available by phone, text at 951-834-7715. I'm on all the socials and the web at thelawyerking.com.
Thelawyerking.com. Fantastic. Awesome. Thank you so much. And guys, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I always look forward to hearing your comments. And until next time, take care. Bye-bye.